Hi, I'm Chelsea Morris and I'm a student at Louisiana Culinary Institute, and today we are going to be cooking a butternut squash latke with an applesauce to go with it. We're going to start with our applesauce because it takes around 60 to 90 minutes to cook. So first, we're going to peel our apples. I'm going to take the top off first, peel down, and we're going to cut around it rather than coring it because it takes a little bit longer when you're coring versus just cutting around that core and squaring off almost. So there you go. And if you get a little bit of core in it, that's okay. You can just slice around that. So like right here, I have a little bit of core, so I'll just kind of cut that out. So we're gonna place our apples into the pan, and we're going to take 2 cinnamon sticks and cut them just in half. It's fine. We're gonna place them just around inside the pan. It doesn't really matter where, as long as they're in there. So we've got all of our apples and our cinnamon sticks in the pan, and we are going to put it into our preheated oven of 350 degrees. There we go. You're gonna cook them for about 60 to 90 minutes. It's gonna be closer to around 60. You'll just wait until they're soft and ready to go. So we're gonna need our butternut squash and our onions in order to first peel them and then grate them for later on. You're gonna take your knife and you're gonna cut it to kind of make it a little bit easier. There we go. So you want to cut all the way to the orange and peel it. You don't want any of that green, veiny, yellow looking color because it's a little bit more bitter. You can take your knife and just cut around it. So for this recipe, you can really serve it as an appetizer or a side for a main dish. And for any event that you would like to, your family's coming over, you want to impress your friends a little bit, cook these. They're good and they're relatively easy to cook. So after we've peeled our squash, we want to take out the seeds in the middle. You're going to just use a spoon. So now that we've got the seeds removed from our butternut squash, we're going to get our onion ready and I'm going to chop that up real quick. Cut the roots off of that and then peel off all of the outside. You don't want that leathery skin. So we've cleaned up our area and we are going to begin to grate. As you can see, we have a little bit of outside on that butternut squash. You can just take a peeler and just peel it off real quick. So we're going to cut these into halves, just to make it a little bit easier to grate. And for the onion, you can just keep it the same size. It's a little bit smaller. So you take your grater, and when you get grated cheese at the store, it's just about that same size, unless you wanted smaller. But this will probably be your ideal cut to use. So when you're grating these, you just want to go up and down, just kind of turn it as you go. And with the bottom of the butternut squash where you peeled it out, it's going to be a little bit softer, so you might not be able to grate that quite as well. So you can just set that one aside as well. You always want to watch your fingers while you're grating. It's not a very good cut to get, so just make sure you know where your hand is at all times. So we've got our 4 cups of butternut squash inside of our bowl, and we're going to now go to our onions and grate them. So with the onions, if you've ever cut onions, you know that it's going to make you cry. So when you do it, try to just go as fast as you can and maybe stay away from that liquid that's going to come out of it. You want to grate it on the same side as the butternut squash, just so you have consistent cuts in there. And like the squash, you want to be careful that you don't grate your finger and possibly gut it. And then you're going to take that first bit, you're going to put it into the bowl with the butternut squash. So we've got our 4 cups of butternut squash and our onion inside of the mixing bowl, and now we're going to whisk up some eggs to add to the mixture. So you just want to crack your egg. There you go. So you can just take a fork to that. Just want to kind of mix it up a little bit. So we're going to pour it in. All you want to do is you can use your hand, you can use the fork to just mix it all up. You just want to incorporate everything together to where you don't have just big lumps of onions in there. So once everything's all mixed together, we're going to form our patties. They're around 3 inches around, and you can just take it with your hand, ball it up, and then just squish it down almost like a hamburger patty. So we've got everything mixed in our bowl, and we're going to take a medium pan and we're going to put it over heat with about 1/4 cup of olive oil. While this oil is heating up, we're going to form our latkes. So all you gotta do is just take it with your hand and just kind of form, take that, just kind of form a ball at first. Kind of push it together a little bit with your hands so you get a little bit of that extra moisture out. And as you're doing that, just kind of squish it down and set it to a side. You can also make these bigger if you wanted, just depending on what size or what meal you're going to give this to, like an appetizer, and maybe a little bit smaller for your friends. And if it's going to be that side, on the side of some meat or anything, you want to give it a little bit bigger. When you get to the bottom where that egg may have settled, you may want to stir it up a little bit, or you might have to push a little bit harder to get a little bit of that excess squash liquid out. Just always remember that you're working with the raw egg, so you don't want to touch everything afterwards. You can, once you drop your latkes into the oil, just wash your hands real quick so that you don't contaminate anything with any raw eggs. Our latkes formed. So we've got our latkes made and our oil is now heated up. You kind of want to wait until you see a little bit of bubbles. You don't want it to smoke at all, because at that point it may burn, and that's not good. So you can take it, just kind of slide it in there. Just be careful because it's hot oil and it definitely will burn. So with these, you want to kind of wait until they get a little bit brown on each side. You can take a spoon or tongs to kind of move it, just to make sure it doesn't stick too much to the bottom of that pan. Right now we just have butternut squash and onions. So it's going to give you the sweetness of that squash, almost like a carrot, and the onion's going to give that little extra pungency to kind of give you a little more flavor. But overall, you can probably add about anything that you would like to go with it. You can make it spicy, you can make it a little bit sweeter, you can add cinnamon and sugar, or you could, go with cayenne and make it nice and spicy. So we're going to check our squash again. Let's check that bottom to see if they're a little bit browner, and they're looking good right now. So we're just going to take it and we're going to flip. There we go. If you don't have too good of a grip on it, you can kind of slide it on the pan and use that little ledge to flip it. And if some of them don't look as brown as you would like them, you can just put them in for a little bit longer. And now we will let that cook and brown on that side as well. All right, so I can smell the apples right now cooking in the oven, so we're gonna check on those real quick. So they're looking about done right now, so we're gonna take them out. So while those are cooling off, we're gonna check on our latkes again. So our butternut squash is looking ready to go. So we're gonna take our pan closer to where we're going to let them cool off. We're just gonna take them out and let them drain. You can use a plate and just put some paper towel to let that excess oil drain off. We're gonna use a rack instead and just let the oil fall off, and we're gonna have a towel underneath to catch all that excess grease. You want to put that grease away from you so you don't burn yourself. So now that our apples have cooled a little bit, we're gonna take them, we're gonna put some in our bowl, and we're going to mash them. So I'm just gonna take my tongs and put a few in here. If you realize that your apples aren't soft enough, you can just pop them back in that oven for a few more minutes just to get that desired texture that you're wanting. So I'm just gonna use a fork to mash these up. You can use a potato masher or anything else really that would crush them. So you can mash these as much or as little as you'd like, depending on what texture that you're wanting. With this, you don't have any extra flavors minus that cinnamon. So if you're wanting to add a little bit more depth of flavor, you can add really anything to these. Any other flavors you can add it to you can add some cloves or allspice to make it a little bit more festive or a little bit sweeter. Give it that little extra hint. Or if your latkes if you don't have too much spice in them, you can make this a spicier sauce to go into the side, so that way that people can make their latkes a little bit more with a kick. So you can take your plate and you can just grab it and put it on your plate. And just one side was a little bit browner than the other, so we're going to plate that side up so it looks a little bit nicer for your guests. And you can really plate it however you'd like. You can put your applesauce in the middle of it and kind of create a little bed for your latkes to go around, or you can put it in a little saucer on the side, whichever you would like. And right now we're going to put our applesauce in the middle so that our latkes kind of touch and get that flavor added in. So we're gonna place our applesauce in the center, and you don't want to plate it on top of the latkes because you don't want them to get soggy, and you also don't want to hide that crispy brown edges that you've got. You can also serve this with a yogurt or sour cream instead of the applesauce. Here we have our butternut squash latkes with our homemade applesauce. My name is Chelsea Morse, and for this recipe or other healthy recipes, go to FrappedFoundation.org.